Hey guys, Scott here. We finally got the patch notes that Vecna is going to ship with on June 3rd when he comes out. And I'm happy to say I took a quick skim over this, and almost every single thing I asked for was done, like to the letter. So I'm really, really happy with it. I feel like they actually very much listened to the community in general. Now, not to say that I'm the community, but I shared the opinion with a lot of people, I think, and seeing that Vecna felt a little too slow and clunky and stuff like that. So it's definitely good to be kind of heard here. And let's go over the actual specifics and what I think. So the first major thing is the spell cooldown has reduced to 38 seconds. It was 50 seconds. I thought it was a minute. I was just eyeballing it, but 38 seconds. I still think this is too long. I think 38 seconds is an enormous amount of time in Dead by Daylight to not have a particular thing active. It's not quite the same for Vecna because it's not like you only have one spell and then you can't do anything for 38 seconds. He does have Fly and he does have Fly to the Damned, and then he can, use Mage Hand to mess with pallets. So he does have multiple tools, and I get the whole point of this is so you don't just focus on one tool and just use that tool over and over again. That's why they want to keep the cooldown a bit longer so you can use multiple tools, but a lot of the times, at least on the PTB, some of the tools did not really feel worth using, so it felt doubly bad to have to wait for a bad power. So now that all these powers are being increased in value, it's going to take playing the killer again to see if this cooldown time feels okay. It's probably going to be okay. But this is not something I can comment on without having a live PTB or being able to play the changes myself. So we're going to have to just wait a couple of days before I make an actual call on that. Next, decrease the charge time for spells to 0.2 seconds was 0.33, so just a little quality of life. You get your bar filled up faster so you can cast it. That's nice for things like Fly, so really no downsides there. Increased movement speed when charging a spell to 4 meters a second was 3.68. This is a pretty sizable increase. This is the thing when you're holding your spell in your hand, but you haven't physically cast it yet. Your movement speed was slow to 3.68. Now you're going to basically be survivor movement speed. So this is for things like when you are about to cast Mage Hand on a pallet, assuming a survivor is going to drop it. Now when you're holding your hand, you're slowed down significantly less, so less distance is gained from the survivor. Even if you make the correct call and see that they're going to greet it and you cancel it as they start running, will it be enough time to get a hit around the loop? I don't know. Probably, I don't know. It really depends on the loop. If it's a short loop, probably not. If it's a long loop, then maybe. So the best part about this, though, is it'll just feel better. Just moving that slow and charging a spell felt bad. So this will just simply feel good. If nothing else, it'll be a great quality of life improvement there. Balance adjustments for assortment of add-ons. That obviously we can't comment on until we see it. I'm guessing a lot of this has to do with the stuff that is now base kit and changed. Things that affected the value of stuff is now going to be a bit different. Increased blood points for some events. That's just good. No complaints there whatsoever. Now for the specifics of certain things. So first off, Fly has been increased in duration. It is now 4 seconds instead of 3.5. Again, nothing too crazy, but that will give you that little bit of extra time considering you're moving extremely fast. It's like another 8 meters of distance you get. Actually, well, probably 4 meters of distance that you get. Regardless, it's like another full second of survivor running that you make up for. So it's good. And that's sort of like what the add-on did to begin with, so it's sort of just built into the base kit now. They also increased the friction at the end of the Fly spell. What that means, so on the PTB, when you ended your Fly, you would kind of drift. And I honestly don't really think they needed to remove that. I thought that was a cool skill thing that you had to learn. You had to learn when to cancel your Fly so you can drift in the right direction. It kind of felt like a cool thing to try to learn to master. So this just sort of dumbs the killer down a little bit. It's mostly just quality of life stuff so everyone can have fun immediately. But as a selfish thing, I kind of like that little drift because it was a skill you had to master, and that's not something everyone can immediately do. So, but it's not a big deal. I'm just complaining about basically nothing there. Next, this is a very important one that I specifically suggested. The killer can now collide with survivors as the Fly ends. So now we actually have Fly being that ability where you can see where the survivor's pathing to, fly ahead of them, and land next to them and block the pallet or window that they're trying to do. At the same time, the survivor can see, oh shit, Vecna's flying over. I need to make a split-second decision here. Do I turn back and go to a different loop so he cancels and goes a bit ahead of me? Or do I keep trying to beat him to this tile? Can I beat him there? So I think that actually enables a really interesting little mind game there. When Vecna's flying at the survivor, they have to make a split-second decision of, am I going to veer off somewhere else or commit to actually trying to make this window or vault? And I think that's interesting and that's fun and that's good balance for both sides. So this is awesome. I'm not sure exactly when the collision is going to start, but it's probably going to be on the descent, which is what I asked for. So that is great. I could not be happier with that change. That makes Fly, in my opinion, actually a usable thing, much like a Wraith will cloak and run to something to body block it or something like that. It's sort of like a burst one-time thing of, trying that. So that is really cool. I'm very excited for that. Fly now seems like it'll be actually a useful spell. Next, we have the Flight of the Damned. This is the, the cone of skeletons that came out. Everyone quickly realized you can just simply dodge it. So it was very easy to avoid. In fact, the only time I ever got hits with it was when I cast Flight of the Damned outside of line of sight. For example, someone will have vaulted the shack window, and I will cast Flight of the Damned when they can't see me casting it. So the skeletons will pop up, but they'll pop up as they're already going 8 meters a second through a wall, and you can't react to that. So the problem is a lot of the times, if you're right next to it, you can still hear it. So you still have a kind of idea that you just probably need to crouch, but even then that can slow you down. And it did have niche uses at preventing certain windows. If you knew that they were going to go there, if they knew that they were going to path to that window, you can aim it at the window ahead of time and basically deny that window, forcing them to go somewhere else. So it did have very limited uses, but it wasn't very useful. So what they've done now is reduce the amount of time from when it spawns to when it fires. So now if you do hear it, you have half the time to react to get to a safe area or start crouching before it'll hit you, which is great. It now moves even faster. And now after you shoot it, you move way faster than before. This is 3.6 from 2.3. So basically 50% faster as you're recovering from casting it. So it's a lot less of a downside to shoot that thing out. So overall, just straight buffs across the board, and that's great. That'll actually still take some skill to use because you can't just like shoot it as the survivor's watching you do it at a loop, because then they're just going to go, oh, okay, and then just crouch and you're fine. You got to be creative with it, but it is good for denying certain things and from, doing blind shots through walls and stuff like that. So that can still be useful, and now it's far less punishing to do so. Next, Dispelling Sphere. The duration was increased. That's whatever. That's fine. The movement speed was increased pretty significantly, which is great. I kind of wanted there to be two forms of Dispelling Sphere. One where you could charge it. It'd be like a bar. If you fully charge the bar, it would shoot it out really fast. And if you barely tap the bar, it would go really slow. That way you could use it in a chase to make an area really unsafe for a survivor because you know we're there at all times. Or you could just shoot it out really far just to make it something that gives you information at the distance. It seems they kind of just went for more the let's just get information really quick thing. And they just made it simply move a lot faster. And one of the most important parts here is your movement speed while recovering, again, is about 50% faster, because it was almost not worth it in a chase to shoot out in a Dispelling Sphere, because you would just lose distance on whoever you were chasing. So you didn't ever really want to bother doing it, and it just slowed you down so much you didn't want to do it even outside a chase, because it just slowed you getting to the next loop. So now it slows you way less. I frankly don't think this needs to slow you at all, considering you can only do it once every like 40 seconds, and it just gives you some information about an area. I don't think it needs to slow you down at all. So I wouldn't even care if they buff this even further by just removing the slowdown entirely, but it's a good step. Next, they decreased the Mage Hand's time to lift a pallet to 0.35 seconds. This is basically like running that add-on by default now. So that is now just something you get, which means that little mind game that the survivor and the killer have when you predict they're going to drop a pallet and you precast it as it's being dropped, that's even more dangerous for survivor now. That is pretty much a guaranteed hit every time, which I think is fair because, again, you have this little 50-50 scenario. It's like a huntress readying a hatchet at a pallet. If you do drop the pallet and she readies the hatchet, then you lost the 50-50, you get hit. If she pulls out the hatchet and you kind of stop and then you keep running, then she loses the interaction. And then you probably get another loop. And that's what I like about the whole Mage Hand thing, lifting up the pallet, because that's basically what it is. Now, it's even more of a guaranteed hit than huntress, because even if there's like tall walls on either side or something like that, you can still likely hit them. The downside is you're picking a pallet back up. So that pallet now might have potential use later. So it's a risk reward thing. But overall, I think it balances itself out because obviously that's not his only power. And the rate at which it's picked up is now even faster now. Additionally, once you do cast Mage Hand, you're now slowed down for, again, 50% less. That's still a giant increase, or rather it's a 50% increase in your movement speed. So that is going to be really good just for even things like blocking a pallet now might actually be useful on certain loops because you're being slowed down for way less. Now, I'm glad they were conservative with this, because if we just remove the slowdown, it would basically just be a killer that just guarantees a hit at a loop once he's close enough, which would basically force survivors to pre-drop every pallet, which would just be boring gameplay. So I'm glad they were a little conservative with this. I think Mage Hand, I was on the very small boat of people thought that Mage Hand actually had some pretty good uses. You just had to be creative with it and sort of enter into that 50-50 mind game area for it to be useful. But I found it to be actually pretty decent on the PTB. In fact, I found that to be his only decent power. So I'm okay with them being conservative and buffing this, but this is nice. This is that yellow add-on that you're just basically getting for free now. Lifting a pallet up in 0.35 seconds is really quick. So that is going to be far less safe for survivors now. So they also have changed a couple of things with items. So activating the effect of a Vecna item now inflicts broken for 30 seconds, meaning, you can't recreate that clip I had where you just pop into a locker with the I don't remember which one is which. And teleport across the map to a teammate and immediately get healed. You're not broken for 30 seconds, so there's a more tangible risk to using it. However, it can also just make you simply get away from a certain down. If you're in a dead zone and Billy's coming at you, locker there, you're out. So it's a much better risk reward now to where you can't just be immediately healed afterwards. But that is still probably a good thing. The aura reveal for magic items, like revealing where the orb is, revealing where the skeletons are, has also been shortened as well, which is probably good because some of the items felt a little too strong in countering the killer's power. Probably the strongest item still is the one that counters Mage Hand by giving you haste when Mage Hand is cast. So that is something killers will have to look out for and possibly use Dispelling Sphere before you try to mind game them. Now, once you hit them with the sphere, it's very easy because it's a giant sphere and it moves pretty fast now. Once you hit them with that, then the chase for like the next minute is going to be much easier, but it'll actually make you have to use that stuff in chase. So I kind of don't mind that. So overall, changes to Vecna are pretty much 9.5 out of 10, like almost every possible thing I asked for. I still think the cooldowns could be probably a little bit faster. And I do think you could not get slowed down after casting the Dispelling Sphere and maybe have that charge thing where you can control the speed of it. But other than that, I mean, that's pretty much every single thing I asked for. So I'm really, really happy with this. And I'm even more excited to play Vecna on Monday. So that is going to be awesome. So Vecna, great changes overall. Blight, they made a change to Compound 33. They gave him more rush tokens because they changed the add-on to be significantly weaker than it was previous to that version, which was stronger than the previous version, which was weaker than the previous. I don't even know, but Blight's still a good killer. Whatever, who cares? Bardic Inspiration, it now lasts 90 seconds, but the cooldown is also 90 seconds too now. That, I think, is probably a buff, because having to do it less frequently, but it lasts longer, is far more important than being able to do it more frequently because you're spending time not doing gens. This is going to be one of those things where maybe at the start of the match, you just spawn in and do Bardic Inspiration to everyone around you. And that will just give them, whenever they spread out and do their gens, probably, 50 seconds of significantly better work. At the risk of the killer finding you playing a little ditty for 10 seconds when you spawn in, if you've got Lethal Pursuer or a Blight or a Billy or something like that. So Bardic Inspiration, I do actually think is going to be a good perk, especially in Survive with Friends. I'm actually borderline worried about it being too strong, but let's see how it is on live. It still has a downside of having to stand still and do nothing, so we'll see, but this is without a doubt a buff, making it last longer but having a longer cooldown. That is definitely a buff for the kind of perk that it is. Still Sight, I still don't think anyone's going to use. Yeah, you combine it with Open Handed, you got like a, 30-something meter range of seeing all that, but it's still probably not good enough to be using. Leave Attunement, I remember being so bad that I don't even think, I don't even know what the perk does. I just remember it was useless, so I don't care about this at all. Dark Arrogance, this is the one that increased your vault speed at the deficit to your stun recovery time. I think blinding as well lasts longer. It's just not worth it still. The 25% is just simply not worth it for getting stun longer and blind longer. It's just not enough. This perk would have to be like 40% minimum for that tangible downside, in my opinion. The only time I would use this is on like a Meme Myers or Shadow Dance build or something like that, where you just want to simply see how fast you can possibly vault just for the hell of it. Because it would be funny. But other than that, I just don't think this is good enough to use. I'd rather use Bamboozle, which is just 10% less and also blocks the window. It's just so much better and has no downside. I'm not really sure what they were thinking with this perk. The downside is too big to only be, slightly better than Bamboozle without the upside. It just doesn't make any sense. But other than that, though, this is mostly just the Vecna patch, and what they did here is fantastic. Probably the only thing I'm still worried about on the PTB going to live now are the Sabo changes. I do think the toolbox changes were a little too good. Like, I don't like the fact that every toolbox now can not only take a hit and Sabo and run away without even getting hit anymore, but I mean, I guess that is the main thing, but that's every toolbox can do that now. That's ridiculous. I think if you're going to make a trade Sabo play to save someone's life, that's a perfectly valid play to make, and that's fine, but you shouldn't be able to get hit and then in the killer's recovery, not only Sabo the hook, but then get away from the hook so you can't get down. That should at the very least be a trade if you do it in the killer's face. Now, obviously, if you don't do it in the killer's face, you predict where they're going. That's a much more, skillful prediction play that you made. Then you can be rewarded with a free, get out of jail free card. It's almost like getting a flashlight save or something like that. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I just don't like that you can do it in the killer's face and not get punished for it. That's too strong. So I kind of don't want that to be pushed to live. Even though I don't mind when people do that because it's essentially just free time. That no one's working on gens. You can slug the first guy and chase the second guy. Like, it's still fine, but it's a little too annoying. So I would hope that they change that a bit. But other than that, though, Vecna, really good stuff. I'm excited for the change. Hopefully you guys are as well. And that's going to be it. Thanks for watching.